Below the planet's surface, in caverns and halls carved from stone centuries ago, creatures stir and machinery creaks to life, producing soldiers of iron. The Republic had thought their assault had tamed its massive factories, but in the ever-shifting tides of this galactic conflict, nothing is certain. Little more than a year had passed in the Clone Wars, and we returned to the desert planet where the war's first blood was shed. Welcome to the Wizard and Warriors channel. We're glad to have you with us on our next adventure into the Star Wars universe. As is our custom, we invite you to get comfortable and grab any beverages, snacks or droid buddies as we recount the tale of the bloody Second Battle of Geonosis. With the front lines shifting back and forth across the galaxy as the Republic sought to retain its control of the major hyperlanes, it was impossible to keep a stable garrison on all worlds, at least without native support, as the Republic lost clones just as fast as it fielded them. Their separatist enemies, conversely, had a seemingly unlimited supply of soldiers, so long as they still retained the foundries from which to build them, relying on the strategies of overwhelming force. As anyone who has viewed our prior videos on this war knows, this second year had been fairly chaotic, to say the least, and with the increasing number of casualties, the Republic had to strip its garrisoning forces on several worlds to move troops into critical theatres for both defensive and offensive operations. One of these worlds was to be the desert planet of Geonosis, the site of the war's first battle, and it was also home to some of the largest droid foundries in the galaxy. Its capture by the Republic as the opening move of the war had been a great advantage, as it severely reduced the number of droids they had to face on the Corellian run, forcing the Separatists into many failed attempts to regain a foothold on the hyperlane. But with the Republic's attention elsewhere, Separatist task forces under the command of Poggle the Lesser, the Archduke of the planet, successfully infiltrated the planet and quietly knocked out the remaining Republic garrison. They were able to not only restore the foundries, but also build new ones, all without catching the Republic's attention, as the native Geonosians built much of this underground. As things stood, it looked as if, in an ironic turn of fate, the Republic would be attacked with a surprise army from Geonosis. But fate would turn a different way, as within the Senate, a certain senator had caught the eye of the Jedi. Rush Clovis used to be the senator from Scipio, who represented the interests of the banking clan, and they, despite keeping a facade of neutrality as members of the Republic, were actually sided with the CIS, whom they supported with their substantial reserves of galactic credits. Thinking him to be a spy, the Jedi asked the Senator of Naboo, Padme Amidala, to investigate him. She travelled with him on his diplomatic mission to Cato Nemoida, where she gathered data proving that he was indeed a traitor, and was working with Lot Dodd of Nemoida, the Senator for the Trade Federation, and Poggle the Lesser to construct the aforementioned foundries on Geonosis. Dodd had realised she was there as a spy, taking information implicating the senators from the banking clan and Trade Federation, and poisoned her. He did this despite the protests of Clovis, who didn't believe she was spying until confronted with evidence that she'd been collecting data on them. She was able to escape with this information thanks to the help of Anakin Skywalker, who was posing as her pilot on the trip, and even some help from Clovis, who forced Dodd to provide an antidote. Once back in the Republic, she informed the Jedi, who were now alerted to the looming threat, and prepared an invasion force to recapture Geonosis and knock it out of the war once and for all. The task force would consist of two of their top generals, Obi-Wan Kenobi and Anakin Skywalker, and assisting them would be Jedi Masters Ki-Adi-Mundi and Luminara Unduli. As with nearly every engagement from this period, we aren't given the exact number of troops at their disposal, but it is likely that they had a fairly large amount, given their fleet was made up of 6 Venator-class Star Destroyers and 10 Acclamator-class cruisers. While it is speculated that the Separatists had more ground troops, as usual, it is likely the disposition of troops was fairly similar, given the Republic's broad offensive plan. The Republic didn't have to fight for space superiority, as the CIS had intentionally left the planet undefended in orbit, so as not to arouse suspicion. But once the CIS had discovered the invasion fleet and correctly guessed it was heading for Geonosis, they sent a quick response force of starfighters under General Grievous to distract them and possibly gather the ships necessary to muster a real defensive fleet. But this force was routed near the planet Dorin by General Skywalker and his Padawan Ahsoka Tano, who would rejoin the main fleet in time for the invasion. Poggle had prepared countermeasures should his presence on the planet be discovered, and had a large shield generator built within his main foundry that would protect the Geonosians' position from orbital bombardment. He had also built defensive emplacements on the boundaries of the shield to block any advance the Republic would have to make to attack his position. Having arrived in the planet's orbit, the Republic assessed the situation and indeed prepared for a ground assault aimed at knocking out the generator. They planned to send a few waves of bomber squadrons to soften up the outer defences, and instead of immediately advancing on foot, they would split up into a three-pronged assault of LAATI gunship groups carrying clone squadrons and ATTE walkers. The left would be under the command of Skywalker and Captain Rex, the centre under Kenobi and Commander Cody, and the right was under Mundi and Commander Jet. Unduli was left to command the troops held in reserve, and Admiral Wolf Yularen was in command of the fleet. The prongs would advance through the front line and make their way to a plain designated Point Rain, from there advancing in force in order to knock out the shield generator. With the bombers having made their run, the Republic launched their assault and soon ran into their first problems. Not long after arriving at the defensive perimeter, the Republic met with heavy resistance, as the bombers' run had done little damage to the separatist lines. Mundi was forced to land outside of the perimeter and assaulted from the ground, while Skywalker's ships were all shot down within the perimeter, though he and a good portion of his men survived. They lost their ATTEs and were, like Mundi, forced to advance on foot within enemy-held territory. Only Kenobi's force was able to make it to Point Rain intact, though with Kenobi himself badly wounded. This left him isolated behind enemy lines, horrifically outnumbered and with no supporting ships. So he and Commander Cody formed a circle with their ATTEs and awaited for the other prongs to join them. Mundi successfully pushed through the perimeter and came to an area known as the Caltrop Field. They required air support to penetrate it, but Yularen informed them he was tied up dealing with the separatist fighters and could not spare any. Seeing no other alternative, Mundi pushed forward his force and had his walker squads remain close behind. Eventually they were able to find a cave system that Mundi believed would lead them close to Point Rain. After entering, however, they were ambushed by Geonosian warriors. They suffered some losses, but were able to make it to the other side largely intact. Skywalker's force, meanwhile, had to navigate the canyons they had found themselves in, and though they had scouted this area before, they came upon a fortress wall that blocked their path. Seeing no other way forward but through the wall, they assaulted it. Unfortunately, they were pushed back on their first attempt. They assembled a strike team and finally were able to mount the wall and place charges on it, demolishing it and paving the way to rally with Mundi. Their advance, though tedious, was not hotly contested, as the main focus of the separatists was Kenobi's force. They believed they had already repulsed the other two, led by Mundi and Skywalker, so they sent everything they had in reserve towards this central breach in their formation. Though Kenobi's force was holding them off, they were doing so only barely. Luckily, with Mundi and Skywalker regrouped, they were able to push forward and breach the separatist encirclement. The shock of this attack, coupled with the now freed-up bomber squads under Yularen, sent the separatists reeling. With them on the run, and with the generator brought into range of Kenobi's ATTEs, allowing it to be neutralized, they could now prepare their final assault. Kenobi and Mundi were taken off the field with the rest of the wounded, and the invasion was left in the hands of Skywalker and Unduli, along with their Padawans, Ahsoka Tano and Barriss Offee, who were now preparing to assault their primary target, the main droid factory. It was currently the only operational factory, functioning at only 50% capacity. It is not known why the Republic did not just orbitally bombard the factory, but it could have been the case that they either believed it would be ineffective, given the majority of it was underground, or that they knew Poggle was within and wanted to capture him alive. Either way, it would have to be assaulted from the ground. Skywalker had planned a frontal assault, but was swayed to Unduli's plan of an infiltration mission consisting of both their Padawans, Tano and Offee. They were to sneak into the foundry via the catacombs that ran beneath it and find the foundry's reactor. Then they would strap a bomb to it, whilst their masters distracted the separatists guarding it. While the Padawans began their infiltration, Skywalker and Unduli advanced upon the factory via the single bridge connected to the entrance. They successfully gained Poggle's attention, and he sent out all of his battle-ready droids in response, along with an assault by his Geonosian warriors from above. This desperate counterattack failed, and they were unable to repulse the Republic. It was only later, when they had completed their new super-heavy tanks, that they regained any ground, as their durability allowed them to advance despite heavy enemy fire, forcing back the Republic. Unfortunately, Poggle was alerted to the two Jedi Padawans within the reactor room as a fight broke out between the pair and his Geonosian forces who were guarding it. He rushed to the room, taking a super-heavy tank, but in the ensuing fight, it turned out that Poggle had provided the Jedi with just the tool they needed. The Padawans were able to take control of the tank, and with their bomb having been stolen by the aforementioned guards, they used the tanks to detonate the reactor, destroying the foundry. Luckily for the Padawans, the durability of the tank allowed them to weather the collapse of the building, and Skywalker was able to save them, though Poggle had already gotten away safely, eluding capture by the Republic, at least for now. After the destruction of the foundry, the Separatist defense collapsed, as there was nowhere to establish a permanent HQ. So the Republic spent several days in mopping up operations, hitting and destroying other foundries as well as Geonosian hives, while some squads were sent to locate Poggle. One of these was under Unduli, and she was able to track down Poggle to a crumbling temple before the Republic lost contact with her, fearing she was either lost or dead. Kenobi, now healed from his wounds, led a team that included Skywalker to find the lost Jedi Master, and upon entering the temple, found it and the catacombs beneath to be infested with undead, zombie-like Geonosian warriors. They battled their way through until they found their way to a Hive Queen's chamber, this one being named Karina the Great, and with her was not only Poggle, but a restrained Master Unduli. Karina revealed she had what was known as Geonosian brainworms, which could slip into beings, allowing the creatures and herself to control them. She planned to have Unduli, Kenobi and Skywalker under her control. But unfortunately for her, this would not come to pass, as the clones were able to take advantage of the environment and temporarily blind her with their headlights, setting off charges on the supports to her chamber, causing it to collapse with her inside as they escaped with a restrained Poggle, bringing the battle to a conclusive end and once again preventing the CIS from making use of Geonosis' factories, which had been one of their greatest assets in preparing for the war. The Second Battle of Geonosis ended with a Republic victory, just like the first, but now the Republic was thorough in their subjugation of the planet, making sure that such a crisis could never be repeated. The brainworms would make it off-world and cause an incident, but were eradicated by Tano and Ophi. Meanwhile, in the larger picture, the Separatists had yet again lost Geonosis and were pushed off the Corellian run. With their operations grounding to a halt, the Republic was determined to keep their momentum. If you want to see more episodes, make sure to subscribe and press the bell button. Please consider liking, subscribing, commenting and sharing, it helps immensely. Our videos would be impossible without our kind patrons and YouTube channel members, whose ranks you can join via the links in the description to know our schedule, get early access to our videos, access our Discord, and much more. This is the Wizards and Warriors channel, and we will catch you on the next one.